I was paddling along, and I had been thinking about what God had done, and that old hymn, "Great is thy faithfulness." Mm-hmm. All that I've needed, thy hand has provided. Mm. And I began to cry, worse than I am now, like a baby, because I became so grateful for the way God would provide basic needs for me.
Wow.
And it just became that became the theme of my whole Mississippi River experience, was that, Lord, there were times I just needed certain things. And there was times he would provide things I didn't know I needed until they happened.
Hi, I'm Caroline Howard, a biblical counselor and certified life breakthrough coach.
And I'm Chris Oneth, marriage and family therapist and executive director of Downey Counseling Associates.
Welcome to Our Next Question, where we attempt to answer the questions of life through conversations in psychology and Christianity.
Remember, this is a place of discovery and definitely not the final answer.
We're back. The gates of hell have been opened.
That's quite a way to start the episode.
Wow. Where do we go from there? Is it because of Dave? Is that what happened?
This is the salvation episode now. The gates of hell have been open. We will save you.
You're tying that into Dave. That's rough stuff.
We're not even in the middle. We're at the beginning of a tiny heat wave.
Yeah.
We're recording in May. We know y'all are not going to listen to this till the end of June or the middle of June.
That's true.
But it's hot.
It's getting there.
And we didn't get like a ease into it.
No.
It was just like the gates of hell were flung open wide.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, following tomorrow's going to be another hot one, plus 100 plus. It will go back to like 90s, 80s, something normal.
So tomorrow's going to be 105, and we're having my son's junior high promotion party.
Oh, wonderful.
And everyone was going to be outside. But
I'm so sorry for everyone
Give him
involved.
some water balloons.
No, we do have some water balloons. Now we might all be crushed inside my house, but that's fine.
So this is part 2 of, did we decide on why do we need
adventure?
Adventure, yes.
We're going to call it part 2.
Oh, wow.
Because
is that more adventurous? It's so
Yep.
foreign legion.
The adventure part there is me spelling it right in the show notes.
Got it. And so we have, again, in the studio, Dave Conway.
Dave's back.
Who did not drive across to another town again. We are recording in succession.
We would never do that to our guests. That would be mean.
No.
Thank you.
Be the bait and switch.
I got an icebreaker question. We need to really think about our poor listeners, what we call these, because they're not really icebreakers. We don't need to break any ice here. We don't know each
It's
other.
so awkward.
Our get to know you
small
question.
Talk.
Our funny question.
Yeah, so there you go.
Okay, there you go. Our question for today: what's a movie or TV show that you could watch over and over again without getting bored?
That's tough.
Who wants to go first?
Caleb.
It's always me. See, I feel like I have a lot of these.
You're the movie guy.
I've always been a very comfort TV movie. Like when I was a kid, I would watch probably The Lion King over and over and over again.
Now I'm missing
It's
that
pretty
one.
basic, but The Office is one I go back to pretty often.
Sure.
Lost is my favorite TV show. I've watched that probably the most out of any TV show.
What
ever.
about Lost? Why?
I think it's the emotional depth of the characters and their arcs and the flashbacks and all this stuff.
Locke.
That's my favorite thing. Locke is awesome.
Yes,
he
was.
Very good character. Yeah, so I think that's it. The
That's
emotional
cool.
depth there. Some movies I really love. The Truman Show is a great movie.
Oh, man.
I think I've mentioned that on the
Solid.
podcast before.
Never saw it.
My favorite movie is 9
missing out.
Days. I try not to watch that one too much. 9 Days. It's not a movie that many people have heard of because I don't want to
9 Days.
ruin it because it's got so much depth for me that I'm I want to watch it maybe once a
Sure.
year so that I don't
Okay.
ruin it for myself. So,
Wow.
9
Yeah.
days. Interesting.
Okay.
all right,
Okay.
Chris, you go next.
Oh, geez.
You picked
He's
on
not
me. I
ready.
get to pick
I
on
He's
you.
not ready. I'm ready.
Do you know?
Do you want to think?
No, I got
Oh,
it.
okay.
I got it. I think I got it. Movie-wise, I would have to say it was actually one of the first movies that really impacted me. I was 14 years old. Can't remember if I snuck into the theater or not to see it, but I did. It's Empire of the Sun. And it was story of actually it's Christian Bale. He's very young
I remember that
in this, and it I actually saw it a few times before I realized that's Christian Bale. And he's probably 12, 13, 14 years old. and it's about a wealthy British family in Hong Kong during World War II, and the Japanese come and take over, and he's in a prison camp. But it's just fascinating. It's a coming of age for him, and it's historical stuff, which I love. But the depth that is there, even the characters that you're talking about, the pilots and soldiers that he meets in the prison camps and everything else, and who's his friend, who's not his friend, and how he makes these bonds. It's just an incredibly moving film. So that's one of them. I think TV show wise, stuff like The Office or Parks and Rec or even Modern Family. My wife had that for another run, and I just sit there, and every single time it gets me. It's funny as heck. It's funny that it's always a comedy thing. It's never serious.
Yeah, that's good though.
Sure.
Awesome. Mine would be Madam Secretary.
Wow.
I know. I've watched it through the entire season. I was on my 5th time through. It was on Netflix, and then Netflix took it off. And now if I want to watch it, I have to pay $30 a season.
Oh, good gravy.
And there's 7 seasons.
Madam Secretary.
Madam with Tia Leone. I
Oh.
say. And then the guy, I can't remember his name. The guy from Wings.
Oh, that
Remember
guy.
show? Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh.
I don't
You don't remember that show?
even know what you're talking about.
It's a political show. She's obviously Secretary of State. And I
Oh.
don't, that show brings me comfort.
Why?
I would literally watch it like as I go to sleep at night. Why? That's a good question. It's got a good family dynamics to it. Like their marriage relationship is really cool because they fight, but they're really they're both working CIA. He's CIA, whatever.
Okay.
So high stress jobs, and their kids are great, but they always make time for. It's probably not realistic.
Sure.
But what we all would aspire to have.
It's the nice fantasy.
Yeah. And I love just the behind the scenes of the governmental stuff, that you get.
Okay.
So
As depicted by them.
as depicted by them.
Sure.
Although they
Dave?
actually had 3 former secretaries of state on one of the
Consulting.
shows. Yeah.
And they're
It
like,
was pretty
I
cool.
endorse this depiction.
I guess that's why they were on there. It was pretty cool
Held
though.
up their hand. Interesting. Okay.
I know. I'm an interesting character.
There you go.
All right. Dave, what do you
Dave?
got?
Well, I know my boys right now, if they're listening to this, we know what Dad's going to say. It's Seinfeld. I
Of
love
course.
Oh, okay.
Dude, of
Seinfeld
course.
over and over and over again. But movie-wise, my favorite movie, every couple of years I got to watch it, is A Few Good Men.
Oh, heck
Because
yes.
I got it only to make it to the end scene. The acting between Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson.
God,
The
you
in-
can't handle
the
the truth.
intensity
Say
of that scene and the craftsmanship of their acting
Oh.
each time just gives me goosebumps. I love it.
I can't
And-
quote some of those lines, but I know
my,
it well.
my actual
I know
favorite
what line you're thinking
my
of.
favorite line. See if I can do this without tearing up here. My favorite line. Show what a wimp I am here. But my favorite line is when the two lawyers are talking back and forth, and Demi Moore's character says, "Why do you hate them so much?" She says, and he says, the other lawyer says, "Because they're a bunch of bullies that beat up on a weakling."
Oh, my gosh.
And then he goes to her and says, "Why do you love them so much?" And she says, "Because they stand on a wall, say nothing's going to hurt you tonight." I love that line.
Yeah.
Wow.
Breaks me up every time.
Ooh, I
Because
got
they
the
stand on a
chills.
wall and say nothing's going to hurt you tonight. Not on my watch.
That's fascinating.
Love it.
If
Love it.
almost those two
Yep.
aren't mutual, like if
Yeah.
you have one of those qualities, like the bullying, if you're willing to stand up there and take a bullet and do all that stuff, then you run the risk of being a bully, potentially, because you have ability and power and everything else, and that's where you might have to rein back because you might have even contempt for someone you see that you perceive doesn't have power and wouldn't do that. And so there could be contempt for you. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, it is.
Wow, good point. Few Good Men, baby.
Now I want to go watch that
What's
movie.
what's one of the more memorable Seinfeld episodes for you?
Oh, the marine biologist is my favorite.
And now what happened there?
When Kramer's shooting golf balls, and then at the very end, they're in a diner, and because George is with his girlfriend at the time or whatever,
Right.
and he's pretending to be a marine biologist, so they're at the beach, and there's a beached well, and somebody cries out, "Is anybody a marine biologist?"
Oh
so
my
he has to
gosh.
pretend to be a marine
Oh my
biologist.
gosh!
But he saves the well, and the way he describes it in the deli at the end is it's awesome.
That's great.
I cannot watch it without laughing so hard.
I will have to check that one
it's
out.
awesome.
I've seen Seinfeld a number of
the
times.
marine
through.
biologist got to
That
say
is hilarious.
So funny.
That is hilarious. Okay, so last time, man, we covered a bunch of great stuff.
We're
Talking
still
about
asking the question.
yes.
Why do we need adventure?
Why do we need adventure? Last time we talked about we talked about physical effort and pushing through some of those things. The idea that you don't have to go into adventure. Yes, it's exciting. There's unknown, but you don't have to go into it totally blind. Being able to say, okay, here's what I can prepare for, but also accepting that stuff might go wrong and not according to plan, and that's where you have to start working through and figuring stuff out. And I always say, and I didn't say this last time, but the reward is proportionate to the peril. Right. So if it's a low level challenge and you're like, okay, I figured that out, that's cool. Then you're like, meh, cool. If it's like, I'm going to fall off a cliff, and then you figure it out and it's like, woo, I don't know. Did you find that true?
No.
I find that it's not the adventure itself that is the key component.
Okay.
But it's the idea of pushing beyond what's your normal thing. So for me, it might look like the Mississippi River or
Right.
Pacific Crest Trail or something like that. For somebody else, it might be, I'm going to be really uncomfortable and I have to meet that family across the street who speaks Spanish. And I had Spanish in high school, but I haven't for a while. I have to figure out how to do it and be uncomfortable to meet them and to get to know them. So I think it could be as simple as that.
Sure.
Maybe it's as big as what I've done, but it's everywhere in between. But I think if you just live in the normal and the mundane and you don't make yourself uncomfortable at times. So I know that sounds really weird coming from the adventure guy, but I think it's any of that. And I really believe that God honors big, bold steps of faith. And so if you take a big, bold step, I just think God's going to honor that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So here's this is a lame example, but I'm not the adventurer. I do my own adventuring in my own way, right?
Black Friday.
Actually, I haven't done Black Friday in so long. So this is not going to be lame. This is my story. I'm sticking to it. New to the being a single mom, being single, in my own house, the head of the house, having to do everything. After being married so long, we always had a bug guy come and spray. Right? And I've not hired a bug guy because I'm a single mom, finances. But my son is like, Mom, I keep seeing spiders. You need to get a bug guy. Oh. And I was like, I think I can do this myself.
Wow.
So I did. Went down to Ace, bought the bug stuff, sprayed the whole entirety of the outside perimeter. I talked to a friend. She was like, this is what you got to do. Oh. Next day, woke up, saw dead bugs. I've never been more proud of myself.
Nice.
I was like, I did that.
Good job.
I killed those bugs.
Good job.
Excellent. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with spiders.
Well, we were getting more than spiders. We were getting those brown beetles. Ooh. Yeah, there's a lot. When you turn on the garage lights and they all it was either burn the house down or figure something out. So and here's the thing. It was so simple. I'm like, why all these years did we hire a bug guy?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I literally just walked around the perimeter of the house and sprayed. I can't wait till I get to do it again.
So oftentimes the things that keep us from taking those risks is a perceived wall that we're like, and we come up with all these roadblocks of why we can't. Oh, I can't because of this. I can't because of that. And that creates this big wall. And what the conversation I've had with people in the past is, hey, it's not a wall. It's a curtain that looks like a wall.
Yeah.
So we go and push on some things and we will find an opening and realize, oh, okay. Yeah. It's maybe it's not as insurmountable as I thought it was in my mind.
Right.
There you go.
I'm learning that more and more these days.
So you mentioned you have some questions for Dave.
I did. I was asking some during the break. Sorry, I'll re-ask them.
Verboten.
But I wanted to prepare him because some of them are my girly questions. Because my very first one was his skincare. You're out in the
Have you seen the videos?
No, but you're out and we will link. You said you had an Instagram or Facebook?
I do.
Okay, we will link to that for sure in the show notes. Because you're out in the elements all day long. You talk about wind. Obviously, there's sun. There's water all around you. What was your skin like?
It was horrible at the end.
Yeah. I mean, you weren't doing Jergens every day?
No.
Extra weight, man.
I mean, when it comes down to it, you can't put enough of that on to combat 9 to 12 hours of paddling in the sun.
Yeah.
You just can't. And actually, most long distance hikers don't even take deodorant.
Right.
Because it weighs too much.
Right.
And it can't keep up with you anyway.
Yeah.
You
And it just
can't-
clogs your pores and adds.
Yeah, it can't.
to your
And so
body.
I think you just have to accept in any of those things that it's going to eat your body up
Yeah.
by the time you finish, and then you got to rebuild.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's funny.
Did you wear a hat the whole time?
I did.
Okay. And
The
sunglasses?
worst, yeah, I
Okay,
did. But
good.
my worst was my lips for
Yeah.
me. My lips
Yeah.
were blistered the whole time, and I got so tired of hearing Instagram. Hey, you should put something on your lips. Like I am putting stuff on my lips.
Good
but,
idea.
but it just won't keep up with the amount. You
So
know?
You should have just worn a mask.
Well, I did at times.
Okay.
So, again, I can only relate to my 4 days. I always tell people my buddy Dave was on the river for 70 days and I did 4 days and it just about killed me. But, after, I think when I was there, I bathed like once and I just jumped in the river, had a bar of soap, and that was it. But really, it almost didn't matter because you just all day you're paddling. And, yeah, and so we were in this little town, walking through the town after eating lunch. It was a break we took, and and we're walking through, and I needed to use the bathroom. The bathroom we went to at the mini market, and we walk in there, and the gal says, "Oh, they're closed down." I'm like, "Oh, please." So we're walking along at this little town in Louisiana, and I see a couple of guys on their porch, and I'm like, I'm going to ask these guys. And I was like, hey, excuse me, hate to bother you. We've been on the river and this, that, and the other thing. You mind if I use your restroom? And the Leland, something or other? Some French last name.
Boudreaux or something.
Boudreaux,
like that.
yes, exactly. Leland Boudreaux, sir. He says, Leland, hey, my name's Chris. What's your name? Oh, Leland Boudreaux, sir. Super kind, and he was like, oh, sure, go ahead. And that was when I think the first moment and look, I'm not going to get too graphic here, but I just walked into that little bathroom and I could smell myself. And I was like, this is whoa. Until
you
you
left a
realize it
lasting
out on the water with the other smelly guy, you know nothing. It doesn't, it's like all relative, right? But that you're in someone's clean house and it's like you realize, oh, good gravy.
Well, based on what I saw on the outside of the house, I'm not sure. I think it was that clean.
It was clean. It was clean inside.
Not once
it
we
was.
left.
It sure was. No, it was. And it was nice and cool too.
Yeah.
It was.
And you
warm.
wondered
It was
what took him
hot.
so
and
I was
humid.
wondering why he was there so long.
I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
He's like right in their fridge having a meal.
My son said, "Well, Dad, didn't you could have left him some money?" And it's like, yeah, I probably should have. But
Just
yes.
a roll of toilet paper.
So I mean, in part of like getting out of comfort zone and being out is that there's people you meet. There's people you meet who are like, man, there are some awesome people out there. And so, Dave, what was kind of your experience
My
with some of the
favorite part
people
of the
you ran
journey,
into?
people have asked me that. What's your favorite part of the journey? And I can tell you, without a doubt, it's the people I met.
Wow.
So one of the things is I'm actually not a loner. I'm not good by myself. I don't like, everybody's like, you're out in the wilderness by yourself. I'm like, yeah, but that's not my natural makeup. I prefer to be with people.
Okay.
The people were just wonderful. And anytime I could, kind of like Chris, he's that way, right? He's going to meet people.
Yep.
They have these things called river angels. If you're familiar with trail angels, they will help hikers. Well, river angels will help those in the Mississippi. I slept on several of their yards that were along the Mississippi. I slept in their houses. I had a lot of them transported me across towns to resupply. Their hospitality and the stories I learned were remarkable, and I loved it. The further south you got, the more hospitable it was.
Wow.
Minnesota's funny. They got this term called Minnesota nice. You ever heard that?
No.
Me neither. And it's a Minnesota thing. Minnesota nice. And they're very nice. They're very polite. But it's interesting because they're not super hospitable at the same time.
Oh.
Which I thought was interesting.
Oh.
It wasn't that they were mean.
Yeah.
Right.
But like one of them, I was sleeping on their lawn, and I'll be honest, I had to go to the bathroom. And he never, the whole time, said, hey, why don't you come in? You need to use the restroom. You need to do anything.
Oh, boy.
So and I'm like,
You're hoping and pleading.
yeah, I was. I mean, I didn't want to say, hey, do you mind if I come in your house? But
Right.
But it was just, that was kind of how it was. But the further south you got, the more that southern hospitality is
Oh, sure.
rocking. And so I met great people. I paddled for about 2 weeks with a group called the Warrior.
Wounded Warrior?
No, it was a Warrior group. But it was a PTSD program.
Okay.
And they sponsored them.
I thought it was a Wounded Warrior project.
No, it was not Wounded Warrior Project.
Okay.
This was
sorry.
a different thing. Can't quite pull their name up for some reason.
You'll think of it at 3 o'clock.
But I paddled with them for almost 2 weeks.
Okay.
And it was really interesting. I was part of them for a while. And,
That's cool.
I get asked a lot if I'm military or peace officer, and I'm not. But I must have a certain air about me, I guess. But I was part of them, and for 2 weeks, I sat around campfires and had discussions.
Oh,
wow.
And Denny, one of the guys, we became pretty close. And he was in the Pentagon when the plane hit, by the way.
Wow.
Oh,
And afterwards, I can show you where his office was.
Wow.
Wow.
It was amazing. And so I saw some PTSD firsthand.
Oh, wow.
It was quite amazing and really great. So I loved that. I cherished that time.
Wow.
And the time with you and with Brian Firkins.
Okay.
And then I spent a week with each one of my boys,
Yes.
which was just awesome.
That's
when you're an
awesome.
adult and you get to spend a week apiece with each of your sons,
Yeah.
was really special.
There are side stories, each of these, right?
Yeah.
With each of the people that came and visited you,
Yeah.
right? There was the side story of me and my adventures on the motorcycle to come see you and then going home. Firkins had his own side adventure where he had no way to get home and he was essentially floating out in the middle of, I don't know, some one of those states, southern Mississippi, something or another. And he goes and he sees on this map what looks to be like, oh, there's a Walmart and there's this and there's that. So he makes his way there and every single thing had been shut down completely.
Oh, man.
And he was like, I do not know how I'm going to make my plane. It eventually worked out by God's grace, and he was able to get home too. But sometimes, entering uncertainty, yes, you can prepare so much, but it's also with an open hand accepting, my goal is this, but that may not be what happens.
Yeah.
And so I loosely hold on to this. I kind of go there in that general direction, but I'm also open to where I guess God takes me or the winds shift me.
When I did the Pacific Crest Trail, I did not finish that trail.
Right.
I did 800 miles of 2,400. I got sick, super sick.
Yes.
And that's a long story behind it, but it was amazing. I experienced God in a way that I have not since or before. It's so powerful, I can't even. It's an amazing.
Wow.
It's probably too long of a story for this, but. And I ended up coming home. And one of the things my wife said, and she's just so much smarter than me. She said, because I really felt like I didn't make it.
Right.
But what God taught me in that was enormous. And what she said was, you thought you were going to Canada, but that's not what God had for you.
Wow.
And if you would have made it, you would have been disobedient. And what God taught you in that was far bigger than accomplishing the journey. And that happened to me on Mississippi in a different way. And the way I experienced God and the things he taught me were enormous.
So what did you learn about God that you didn't know before when you were on the Mississippi?
I think I didn't learn anything I didn't know about God, but I experienced him in a way I hadn't before.
Okay.
So I try to do my quick story here because I think it's noteworthy. But I got up around Minneapolis, and I had to go through Minneapolis. It was really tough because it's an urban thing.
Yeah.
And I had got to a point where it was 6:45 at night, and it was getting dark about 7:30 at that point.
Okay.
And I couldn't get off the river. I had been paddling since 6 in the morning.
Wow.
And it was 6:45. So I'd already been paddling 12 hours. And I began to panic. I said, God, I have to get off the river. I have to sleep at some point. I got to eat.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find, and I began to pray in earnest, Lord, please, you have to give me a spot.
Wow.
And I paddled probably another hour or so, 45 minutes. And I got that little tap on the shoulder. God does that. And there's the spot. And I saw this little outcropping that didn't look great, but I paddled over to it. And it was kind of steep. but it was sandy, and I was able to dig out. My tent was on an angle, but I was able to dig out a little spot to sleep in. And it was in the middle of an urban jungle, but it was protected. There was like sticker bushes behind it, so I was worried about people at that point, not animals.
Oh, wow.
And, I could hear planes landing because Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport was nearby. I could hear trains. There was traffic. I'm in the middle of an urban jungle trying to camp.
Wow.
And God provided this spot.
Wow.
That happened to me 5 or 6 times. And one of the last times it happened was even more severe. I ended up camping down a creek that came off of the river. And it was the most horrible campground. I mean, it was uneven. The bottom of my tent was touching the water in this creek.
Wow.
And it was miserable. And I was, Lord, what am I going to do? And here was the spot. And what happened was during the night, the wind came up and the rain came up. And I was sheltered in this creek that came off of the main channel. And I was even under this tree. I was barely even getting any water on the tent.
Wow.
And in the morning I said, God, you gave me what I needed, not what I wanted and asked for.
Yeah.
So about a week after that, I was paddling along and I had been thinking about what God had done, and that old hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Mm-hmm.
All that I've needed, Thy hand has provided. And I began to cry, worse than I am now, like a baby, because I became so grateful for the way God would provide basic needs for me.
Wow.
And it just became that became the theme of my whole Mississippi River experience, was that, Lord, there were times I just needed certain things. And there was times he would provide things I didn't know I needed until they happened. And so my level of gratefulness for the simple things increased. The other thing through that is I think emotion, I'm not super emotional generally, but what has changed in me since the river was that it was like God peeled off layers of protective scar and crap.
Wow.
Can I say that on air?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Crap
So
away.
he just peeled off layers and layers of stuff that I didn't even realize. And thankfully, I think that has stayed with me.
Oh, wow.
And I can tell you that in church, I have connected in worship like I have not in 30 years.
Wow.
And I'm really ticked. I keep saying I got to talk to their facilities guy because something's wrong with the air conditioning system. Because every time they do worship, my eyes start watering.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's horrible.
Outrage.
I mean, I'm 60 years old. I'm not supposed to be an emotional little baby, but I have been turning into that because
that's awesome.
Just connecting with what God has done.
Well, really, and it's a couple of things. I think it's exposing ourselves or being willing to enter that, remove that comfort to where other things are revealed. We often, I think, use comfort, whatever comfort is, food, ease, to not face any sort of strain, and then it's like we use that to protect ourselves in a bunch of different ways. And when that's all stripped away and that's gone, and you're like, oh, okay, it's just me and God's creation and God, and that's it. And I think that's where the tendency comes to reveal things that we're like, oh. I love what you said about giving me what I need, not necessarily what I want. I think we as a culture need more of that. Yeah.
I have a question that maybe we'll throw you for a loop. I don't know. We'll find out. But I'm curious to know, is adventure something that's always been a part of you? When did you first discover that love of adventure, if you can pinpoint it?
I guess it depends on how you define adventure. So I have been on a motorcycle my whole life. Since I was 15 and a half and could ride the street. So I have ridden every road on the West Coast at some point. I raced cars for about 15 years. My wife and I have traveled on some through Italy and France and England, and we do it the hard way, which is no tours or whatever. Right. It's public transportation, and it's planes, trains, boats, and motorcycles. I have motorcycled around Lake Como with my wife on the back, and we rode scooters through streets of Paris and so I think I've always done that stuff, but I've never done it just because I'm looking for the adventure. It's just, it interests me and I want to do it.
All right.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think I've always seen it as adventure. It's just like, oh, that looks great. Let's do that.
Yeah. And over time, you've seen the value of that that's had in your life. Yeah.
I have.
So then when I hear you say that, I hear a desire to do something and also the willingness to follow through. Because I think there's a lot of us who at first we crush our desires. We desire nothing because we fill it with, I don't know, artificial things. It's like we quell our appetite with the bowl of chips, right? So we don't really get that like, ooh, this would be cool. So that's one layer. The next layer is we don't follow through, man. We might reach a level where we say, oh, that'd be cool. And that's where it dies, right? But a willingness to be able to say, oh, let me step through on this. And I equate it to stepping through on God's blessings, right? Because there's great things to be had when we answer that call, when we move forward instead of just be passive and sit and go, oh, well, I don't know. Do you think that's part of it?
I think so. I mean, there's always effort to do it. It always costs you time and money and planning.
So worth it.
But it has been. Yeah. It doesn't always go right and well, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, whatever that means,
It's not an adventure till something goes
That's right.
wrong. So.
That's right. That's right.
So what did you pack for this trip? What were your essentials?
Oh, this is going to kill you. You're not going to like this.
And then I want to know what you ate.
Yeah.
What sustained you.
Caroline, you're not going to like this at all. So I basically had, I think, 3 pairs of pants, 3 shirts.
Okay.
3 pairs of underwear, some socks. Mm-hmm. And there were times it would be 2 to 3 weeks before I ever got to a laundromat. And so you just got to be okay with being stinky and dirty.
Yeah.
But I did use clothes that work well with that. So hiking clothes are made of materials like you don't use cotton.
Yeah.
Right.
It's more that type of gear. So, I just the best piece of equipment clothes-wise was my pair of Swiftwater Crocs, which are some sandals you can get wet, but they're not the plasticky ones, and darn tough hiking socks. I wore those 24/7.
That's awesome.
Well, other than when I was in the tent at night, and they kept my feet in great shape the whole time. They get wet, they dry out.
Okay.
Right.
And so you just got to kind of be used to being uncomfortable and.
Well, and I think that's another component too, being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've been saying that I've become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I ate. It was wonderful compared to hiking because the boat holds more.
Yes.
And so lunch was always something on a tortilla. It was always my favorite is actually Frito bean dip.
Right.
Pop that thing open. They're cooked beans. You got burritos,
Yeah.
Bagels in the morning. I would eat every hour. I had this rotation of some candies for the sugar, some oranges, beef jerky, trail mix, and or something else.
What about the honey buns?
Honey buns are great because they're a tremendous amount of calories. It's the only time in your life where you can eat as much as you want.
That is so true.
Yeah. When I hiked, I would go in a deficit, but I'd get into a trail town. I was probably, this is not an exaggeration. I was probably eating 8,000 to 10,000 calories a day.
Wow.
Because I would such a deficit.
Yeah.
I mean, I would eat entire pizza myself.
Nice.
And because you just couldn't get enough fuel to keep up with the drain.
Right.
So did you eat like a big meal like that every day or every few days?
No,
like
on this I didn't have the need to quite as big. I was in a town about every 2 weeks, maybe 3. Okay. I would get some big. Through Iowa is wonderful because Iowa's close to the river, and there's a lot of little like marinas. Mm-hmm. So I started doing these. I had this collapsible ice chest. That was my favorite thing. I would I used to get some cold. I craved cold drinks.
All right.
Okay.
And when I could, I would get off the river and go eat at a restaurant.
Yes.
And
order like 4 meals, and they'd be like someone joining you. You're like, no,
but yeah, almost. But eating on the river, on trail, or anything like that, it's fuel.
Yeah.
So I know you're a foodie, right? You like the food stuff. You like
I
fancy
eat for
foods?
food.
Yeah.
I eat for taste.
Yeah, no, it was pure. How many calories can I get?
Yeah.
And my favorite dinner, figured out I found these microwavable pasta, so it's already cooked.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
And I would buy the little tiny can of tomato sauce, and I had some seasoning, and I had a frying
Look at
pan,
that.
and I would do this pasta. That was my favorite
Nice.
at night.
You didn't, I mean,
love it.
the Waffle House we ate for a couple times wasn't
Look,
one of
you
your
complained
favorites?
about it, but honestly, for me
ate
it
it
was
all.
wonderful.
We
I
ate it
I
all.
cleaned it up.
He hadn't been on the river long enough yet.
Yeah.
We just, so that leads
That
to
was a cultural experience. Is what that
couple
was.
stories where, like getting there to find Dave, it was essentially, hey, pick a hotel where you think is close to the water, and that's where we can stay, and that'll do it. Well, the one I picked that was close to the water wasn't actually a hotel; it was a casino that was on the water that had these like ramparts that you could not get. It was these fortified walls that there was no way to pass.
There was no way.
And so we essentially hid the canoe, and then we had to hike up to the hotel, cross the street, and then about 20 pounds of sand came off of Dave after he got
It was disgusting. I have a
During the
picture.
shower.
It was disgusting. I am disgusting. I mean, well, and before I got to you, I had spent those 2 weeks between Cape Girardeau. I had to go through Memphis, and I was out on the river a long time without any city and any shower. And I had got stuck at the tail end of a hurricane.
Oh.
And so I had to, it blew sand, the wind blew sand everywhere.
Oh, sure.
It was embedded in everything.
Yeah, it was. It was on the floor of the canoe and everything.
It was everywhere.
That's terrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then our alligator experience, the
Yeah.
first alligator, and I am so glad that I was able to experience an alligator. Woohoo! We're pulling up to it, and it almost didn't look real. We saw this thing, and I'm like, Dave, that's an alligator, and I'm filming it. There's actually film of this, and I'm like, what's the protocol, Dave? And then we get up on the beach, and there are alligator tracks everywhere, and we look around, and we're like, and I said, Dave, I don't think this is our beach. I think this is his beach. And Dave looks around, and he goes, Chris, I think you're right. And so we get back.
We moved.
We back in the canoe and went a little further up the river and found another great beach with no alligator tracks. So that was super valuable.
Yeah, they were,
Man.
after you left, on the rest of the way out through Louisiana, they were everywhere.
Wow.
And the last 2 nights, I camped in some areas that looked like a scene from a horror movie. It was just thicket woods.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what's going to come out of this in the middle of the night? And there were alligators everywhere, and I could hear them all during the night. They're very ungraceful creatures.
Oh, wow.
They look like they should just slip into the water, but they don't. They go kind of clunk, clunk, splash.
Oh, wow.
And I could hear them all night around me.
Oh, goodness.
But I knew they wouldn't come up the bank, and I knew that. But it was just, you could hear them all night. And the last 11,
You're gonna be the one guy they
the last
attack.
11-mile channel going out is called Hog Bayou, and I joked it should have been called Alligator Bayou because they were everywhere, and it wasn't very wide. And you would see them; they would see you, and then they would dive.
Wow.
And then their little eyes would pop up.
Oh,
and
Like
you
closer to you?
Yeah, they'd look at you, and then you got closer, and they'd get submerged.
No.
wow.
And your canoe would go over the top, and I would see bubbles, and I'm like, as long as you stay there,
Wow.
and you'd know they're there, but you just had to not pretend they're there. But so what? You know,
Yeah.
So
you
what?
just had to come to grips with, doesn't matter. As long
Sure.
as this boat doesn't sink, I'm okay. But
You ever run into any situations where you were like, oh no, what have I done? Like, what am I doing?
The most harrowing situation I had was after the first week. My son Adam was with me, and then he left. I was by myself.
Okay.
And I got into this one campsite. It was up on a bluff, about 30 feet up. And I got there, and mosquitoes were horrible.
Oh my gosh.
And when I got there, there was a dumb squirrel running around, driving me nuts.
Okay.
And so I finally had gotten a tent, and it was getting dark. And I heard this rustling. I'm like, that stupid squirrel's eating my food. There's a picnic table, and my bag was up with the food was on this picnic table. And it was a water campground. You could only get to it from the water. You could only get to it by paddling to it.
Wow.
There was no land, no trail to it. And stupid squirrel, I jumped out of the thing with my little flashlight, and it was not a squirrel.
Oh boy.
It was a bear.
Oh.
And he was 15 feet. He was as close as Caleb. He's 15 feet from me.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
And he was standing on his back legs.
Oh, geez.
And it was a black bear. It wasn't a California brown bear.
Right.
And I went, oh.
Hey, buddy.
And I tried to do the yell thing and make myself big.
Oh, my gosh.
And I moved around behind the picnic table. And he just looked at me. And so I started talking to him. I'm like, okay, Mr. Bear. Let's have an understanding here.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool, right? I just, and I'm talking to this dumb bear, and he's looking at me, and then he kind of wandered around, and he was around for about 5 minutes, and then he eventually left. But I got to tell you, it was the only night I didn't sleep well.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And I shouldn't tell you this, but so like there was a toilet out at this campsite about 25 yards out in the woods, and it was just a box, right? Toilet. It's just a box.
Wow.
And in the morning, I'm like, I am not going out into the woods to go to the bathroom. So I did at the edge of the campsite. So I'm sorry for whoever had the campsite after me,
Right.
but I was not going out in the woods where that bear was. And the funny part is the name of the campsite was called Swimming Bear.
Oh, Swimming Bear.
Swimming Bear.
Looks like you met him.
Yeah, but in my defense, I stopped at a boat ramp not far from there before that day called Bert's Beers.
Oh.
And there was no beer.
That's
So you just-
sorely
you just
disappointing.
Yeah, so
assumed.
I'm Swimming Bear. I'm like, well, that's the way they advertised it.
You thought
but
they were just being cute with
I
their names.
did, but apparently it meant something.
It was a
So
warning.
we did stop into one town for lunch. The town was right there on the water. And it was great. We go up and we eat at this place, burgers, and unfortunately I had a beer. Now, while I was drinking the beer, it felt like the best thing ever.
Oh.
It was after we got back in the canoe.
Yeah.
And I could not keep my eyes open. And so essentially my eyes were closed and I was paddling the whole time. And it was like half asleep, but still paddling in rote the whole time. And I'm sure I was absolutely no help to Dave. But so
You learned your lesson.
word for the wise, do not drink beer if you're going to go out paddling on the Mississippi
No
for the
drinking and
entire
paddling.
rest of the day.
Yeah. Did you notice I didn't have a beer?
Yeah, I did notice that. That crossed my mind for a split second. Then I was like,
Have I answered all your questions?
You have.
Okay.
You did a good job. What's fun? Okay, so this is kind of a good place to end because you just mentioned a bear, and for some reason, as we're talking about this, the Winnie the Pooh song "Adventure is a Wonderful Thing."
oh,
I don't know if any of you have heard it. So I looked up the lyrics really quick, and it just says, "Adventure is a wonderful thing. Pack only the essentials. I'll tell you what to bring: your strength, your nerve, your hearts, your wits, and for Scolosaurus attacks, first aid kits."
Amen.
hey.
And I feel like that
Amen.
kind of summed it all
That's
up
awesome.
right there.
Truer words
Perfect.
have never been spoken.
Winnie the Pooh always has great
There you
wisdom.
go.
He just
That's
doesn't know how to
awesome.
spell it.
Well, Dave, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Yes.
coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And you've been a blessing.
I appreciate
and
it.
giving insight and
I kind of want to go
account.
on an adventure.
There you go.
All right.
And let's hope that it inspires others. And if it does, hey, leave a comment. And we'd also love for you to give us a rating. Want to shout out to the comment made on YouTube when someone personally shared that they had "It Is Well With My Soul" actually tattooed on them.
That's so
in reference to after their husband had passed.
Oh.
And that is a hard fought, hard won.
Yeah.
It is well with my soul.
Amen.
But it also gives full understanding
Yeah.
to what that means.
Yeah.
So
That song has meant a lot to me, especially this. I mean, I already said it like on our last episode, why, but just some stuff with my son. And I just keep saying, but I know it's well with his soul.
right.
Like we might have these things we're not succeeding at,
Right.
but I know his heart and it's well with his soul. So we're good.
Awesome.
We're good. All right.
Okay. Thank you
See you
again.
next time.
Thanks for joining us today as we continue our journey talking about life's many questions.
To stay connected with us, you can follow us at Downey Park Counseling on both Facebook and Instagram. You can also follow Caroline on Instagram at Relatable Caroline. And make sure you tune in next week for our next question.